Hey guys, MooJK here to talk about the upcoming Final Fantasy Type-0 event. I'm excited regardless of whatever Final Fantasy this is because I'm just starving for King Mog farming, basically. I want 6-star mats, I want Gigantors, I want all of it, tickets. So let's get into it a little bit. The first clear rewards are shown here. They're not really that great. You get 1 summon ticket here, pretty standard stuff. This is the event currency, Phantoma. And then you get 500 Lapis for clearing the Elite Quest, which is okay, but I'd much rather have a Trust Moogle. But that's probably going to be sold by King Mog anyway. So King Mog is also going to have these exclusive abilities, and these go on the FF0 Type-0 characters. We'll go over it as we get to each character. Yes, they do have a 5-star Trust Moogle here, so I don't know if that's 1 or 2. Sounds like it's plural. And then also they're going to have this equipment. Now, Survival Edges is only 32 attack, but it does have 10% HP, so this is good for beginners, but it might also be good for intermediate to even pro level players, only because certain tanks might be able to make use of that HP plus 10% and not equip things like the what is it called, Blessed Hammer, or I can never remember which one it is, but it's the one that gives 15% HP. So some tanks might want to use this, but it's also good for beginners. Rune Trigger is just a mediocre gun with 52 attack, MP plus 15%. I struggle to think of somebody who uses a gun that needs that MP in attack. Obviously, if you have Medius, you could put this on him, I guess. It's better than what can be store-bought, but it's really not that good. Unusual Artifact, attack plus 15, defense plus 15, and HP plus 5. This is kind of nice, I guess. It's for 6-star characters, this works out to about a 10% attack boost. So, you know, it's an upgrade to attack plus 10%, basically. You get an extra HP buff here, defense, so it's a nice little upgrade for those things. Compared to TMs, obviously it's nothing, but not bad. And then we get character bonuses for the event. It's not clear if we're going to have a second half of the banner, but my guess is that we are. We've been waiting for Final Fantasy Type-0 for a long time, so my guess is that the first week we're going to have these 4 characters, and the next week we're going to have the other 4 characters that, you know, for Type-0. I don't think Rem is going to be part of it unless they surprise us, but who knows. So that's that with the bonuses, and then we have the Doublet Corn. This looks like a big boss on Pro and above that is going to have all this currency. If this is 3,000 per clear, that really makes these first-time clear rewards look really cheap. But we'll see. I don't know any information about that. We'll find out as we go. And then why don't we jump into the banner itself. So, the base 5-star unit for this banner, the grand prize, I guess, is Ace. He's a mage, but a very unique one. He is not able to really dual cast a whole lot. He has a couple of spells that he can, but his main arsenal is made up of very unique spells that we'll go over in a little bit. His Trustmaster reward is Mag plus 30, MP plus 20%, so it's like an upgraded Shantotto Trustmaster reward. For a base 5-star unit, this is pretty mediocre, I would say. It's nice to have, might even be best in slot, but for a base 5-star, you're not going to be super excited to get that or farm that up immediately. The next unit is 7, who is a base 4-star, but also goes to 6-star, and this is a pretty unique support character that really works well on mage teams. Again, I'm not really big on mage teams or mage meta right now, but if you are, this would be a really good unit to have. And the reason for that is because she has a lot of debuffs that, you know, lower spirit, lower resistances, would really make your mage team do a lot more damage. But again, it's really specific to a certain type of player. Her Trustmaster reward is another ribbon type of thing. It seems like it nullifies a lot of status ailments, so that's pretty nice. I'm not sure if there's anything missing from this. I'll have to confirm later, but it's basically another ribbon. And then we have the two booby prizes on this banner. We have Jack, who is an attacker, but you know, again, he's 5 stars max, so we'll go over that in a little bit. His Trustmaster reward fills limit break gauge, but you know, that's not super useful unless it turns out to be really fast. It reminds me of Cloud of Darkness, basically. And then the other one is an archer, and there's a lot of shooting type of abilities on this character, which I don't like. I don't typically like, you know, max 5-star characters anyway. The Trustmaster reward is pretty decent. It looks like it's a mag and spirit plus 20% boost. Obviously, that would go well on your mages and, you know, other characters as well, but primarily your mages. It's like a baby version of Vanille's Magistral Crest, which is 30% to these stats, so probably very easy to pull. Not bad, but definitely not best in slot. So why don't we get into more of the specifics? All right, let's start with Jack. He is not a good character, max 5 stars, but some people are going to want to use him for his bonuses, so we'll kind of approach it from that standpoint. His Trustmaster reward, Ignorance, is actually double the rate of Cloud of Darkness's limit burst. I'm sorry, Trustmaster reward. It fills up basically 2 crystals instead of 1 per turn passively, so in a way it's somewhat useful if you're really trying to rely on your limit burst, but for the most part it's just not worth the slot. His HP is actually very low for a physical attacker. He's very squishy. His attack is pretty good, but again, 5 stars, big whoop. You're going to want to equip him with a katana, although he can equip these other things, and the reason you want a katana is because you get passively attack plus 20% automatically, I should say, and then you also get another 20% with the katana, so that's the only way that he's going to put out any decent damage. He does have Blade Blitz, which is kind of outdated, but still nice to have as AoE. He has a Barrage. This is basically Barrage with a different name. So Blade Blitz and Barrage, pretty nice skill selection there already, I guess. He does have Cheer in case you still don't have that on your team. You don't have a Refia, you don't have a Fina or whoever else. And this is probably his main utility right here, is that he can decrease defense by 40%. So that's better than a full break, at least from decreasing defense, and a little bit worse than Elza's 50%. So that's pretty nice to have, especially if you have, you know, follow-up powerful attackers to make use of that. But for the most part, pretty mediocre character, bad stats. His limit burst is kind of stupid. He can do AoE, but he has to sacrifice 20% of his HP to do it. And other people can do this much damage, if not more, without sacrificing. So it's kind of like, why, you know? So not a good character, but if you're trying to make an all Type-0 party for the event for the bonuses, then it makes some sense. Trey is a shooter slash archer, I should say. Not a good character again. Maxed out at 5 stars, but we're trying to find out, you know, can these be used in a party for the bonuses? That's our main focus for these guys. So ironically, he does have more HP than a upfront physical attacker does, even though he's sitting in the back shooting arrows. Attack is pretty low, and he can only use bows. I'm not a big fan of these shooting skills, but he does have some use. For example, he has Stop, and a number of these units actually have Stop, and it seems like it's becoming a little bit more part of the meta. Because technically I don't think there's actually resistance for against Stop. So that's one thing to consider. He does have some of these weak physical damage abilities. He has HP Drain, Barrage. You know, it's always kind of useful to have. And then he has this decent AoE, I guess, but it has a delay. So ultimately it ends up being kind of like a Blade Blitz on average. It's 3x, but it has a delay of 1 turn. So if this is like, what's her name, Luna, he'll basically shoot up arrows and then it'll come down after 1 turn, so decent damage, but with the delay it's not anything special. He does have decent AoE limit burst with ignore defense, but you know, nothing really special again. And that's about it for Trey. Now, we're getting into the units that can actually go to 6 stars, so we're going to discuss whether or not they can actually be useful for your party, actually improve your party. So we'll start with 7, who is a base 4-star and goes to 6-star. This is a unique support type of character. This character actually goes really well in mage parties. If you use mage parties, if you like mage meta, then this is a good character for you. And the reason for that is, well, I'll go over the stats first. The HP is pretty decent. The attack is pretty decent. Well-rounded stats, I guess. But the main reason you want to have this character in a mage party is because there's ways to lower spirit and resistances. So diving strike decreases spirit by 40%, which is, obviously better than a full break. And it does, decent damage while you're doing it. So it's not just a debuff by itself, so 40%. And then on top of that, you have, again, some damage, but then it's coupled with decreasing resistances by 50%, which is pretty huge. So if you have a mage, if you're using X-Death or Darkfina in your party and you're spamming all these elemental spells, then coupling it with 7 in your party is not going to be a bad idea at all. Again, I don't really use mages that much, but for some of you who do, this would actually be a character worth going for. Now, the attack never really gets that high. Base 140 is not that special for an attacker, and there's only a 10% passive here. Magic passive, which is interesting, it boosts elemental lash and some of these other things that you're not going to use that much, but pretty decent character overall if you're going to use it properly. Now, there is an exclusive materia that's only in global, and they added this kind of stuff because they knew that these characters were underwhelming. And honestly, the fact that they're coming out right now is a little bit late, and they're not really going to be part of the meta for the most part, but this is not bad. 2.1 with critical 100%, so that kind of equates to a 3.2-ish multiplier. And then it also has paralyzed 50%, so in some cases that could be useful to have, but even if the paralyze doesn't work on that enemy, a 3.2 targeted single target attack, I should say, is pretty nice to have. So this is definitely worth having if you're gonna pull for 7 and use her. Wait, it is a her, right? Yeah, it is. So the fact that she got this ability in global makes her more usable and, adds some utility as well. The limit burst is really good. Again, if they're susceptible to paralyze. It's AoE with a 100% chance. This could be useful in certain cases in certain fights, but a lot of bosses are immune or resistant to paralyze, so there's limited use in that way. Some people mention that it's good in arena, but I mean, honestly, how often do you fill up your limit burst gauge? I mean, most fights, at least at the high end, I guess, are done in 1 or 2 rounds, but if you happen to get into a long dragged out fight, then this would be very game-changing. So pretty decent character if you're going to use mage meta. Otherwise, you're not really going to find any of this stuff useful. And now we're going to get to Ace, the grand prize of the banner, although I would say that this is probably the worst base 5-star unit that we've ever gotten in this game. So he's base 5-star, his Trustmaster reward again boosts magic by 30% and MP by 20%, which is good. But you would expect something like that on a base 4-star unit, not a base 5-star unit. So decent, but not something that you're going to really pull for or try to farm urgently. This is a mage with 147 magic, pretty good, but in a weird twist, because Ace can't really use dual cast on a lot of his spells, in my opinion, he's going to end up being worse than X-Death. So this is going to be the 3rd best mage in global, and he's a base 5-star, so consider that when you're pulling. Let's get over the passes real quick. Mag plus 30%, pretty much a must for any top tier mage. Now there's a lot of random type of stuff, and we'll kind of go over each one, but none of these are really more useful than their Aga counterparts or Meteor, Ultima, and things like that. The only reason you'd want to use this is because it's very interesting, honestly, and very different from other characters. It could be fun, and I don't really know about the chaining potential of these things, but for the most part, it's kind of not that efficient, and it's too random for my taste. Attack hand is at the weakest level, 50% chance, is basically an Aga level spell. So for 30 MP, you're getting an Aga level spell, which normally costs about 20. This would be a bad use of that ability. 30%, 2.2, we're getting into, I think that's Aja level, I'm not really sure, but you know, that's a little bit better. And then 15%, 2.5 with Ignore Spirit, 10%. That's about 2.7-ish, I think. So if you get that to come out, then that's pretty good. And then Gigaburst, 5% chance, 3.2 with Ignore Spirit. This would actually be better than Ultima, but again, it's 5% chance. So if you like randomness, I guess, you know, this guy is for you, but I personally think this isn't the best ability. Although if you average it all out, I guess it is MP efficient. But the problem with Ace overall, like I've mentioned, is that you can't dual cast any of these abilities. The only things that you can dual cast are these plain Jane vanilla spells down here, which you probably will use in some cases, but for the most part, all these things can't be dual casted, which is his main drawback. If he could dual cast these things, then he would actually be a very powerful mage. Support hand, this is again another character that gets stopped, and it doesn't increase the chances of stopping the enemy, but it just increases the duration if it triggers correctly. So again, too random for my taste. Maybe stop meta's a thing. Maybe you could have a whole bunch of units using stop, but I wouldn't rely on it too much. If you had somebody like Ace, what's the other character? Trey, Noctis with his, you know, Ice Flask, and then other characters, maybe Chizuru with Dismissal. You could have a whole party of stop users. Maybe that's a thing, but I don't really see much use for it at this current point in time. He does increase his limit break gauge really quickly, 200%. Some characters have 100% here, but 200% is pretty crazy. And his limit burst is really strong, I guess, if considering how quickly you can use it. So it's 2.9 with Ignore Spirit, 50%, so that works out to about a 5.8 multiplier. As a reminder, Ultima is 2.8 with 25% Ignore Spirit, so this is definitely strong, especially if you're able to spam it somewhat. Maybe if you have Devotion and then you couple it with Jack's TMR, I don't know, maybe that's a thing, but for the most part, I wouldn't rely on limit breaks too much. Life Hand is him healing himself. Kind of situational. I don't really know why you'd want to do that instead of just having a healer heal you. And then auto refresh is nice. Spirit Hand is a way to recover MP to self, but I would much rather use something like Osmos, rendering this completely useless, honestly. I mean, 70% chance to recover 30 MP only, and it costs 20 to begin with, so you're only recovering a total of 10. I mean, you would much rather use Osmos and get like a ton in one go than this little random thing, so it is what it is. Tri-beam laser is basically Ultima. It's the exact same multiplier, exact same Ignore Spirit, and exact same MP use, so this is your Ultima, but it cannot be dual casted. Again, there's a big downside to this guy. Now, he does get a little better in global because he has exclusive materia, and he's able to use these abilities. Each has a quarter activation chance, and if you average it all out, it's pretty decent, I guess. The stop is not what you want, but for these two, Mega and Giga Burst, these are pretty decent for 45 MP. You know what, actually it's not, because let me tell you what, I'd much rather use Tri-beam laser at 65 MP and get the guaranteed Ultima than to get something that's weaker than Ultima here, barely better than Ultima here, and then weak stop abilities. So this is not really a good exclusive materia. It doesn't improve him, in my opinion. 7's exclusive materia definitely does improve her, having that single target ability that, you know, is really good with the critical and can paralyze, but Ace's is too random and doesn't have enough. If this was Mega, Giga, and then other kinds of bursts that did damage, then I would definitely recommend this, but as it is now, not a good exclusive materia. And then limit burst, again, we already went over that. So all in all, I think this is the worst base 5-star unit we've ever had in global. it could be fun to experiment with him, honestly. I might even create an alternate account again to just play around with the Type-0 characters because they are so interesting. But as far as the meta goes, as far as maximizing your return on your tickets and your Lapis, this is not a banner you want to pull on. Overall, the units are pretty weak. If you use mages again, 7 would be the one that you want to go for. This girl right here, but for the most part, this is a skippable banner. This is a waste of Lapis and tickets if you're saving up for Orlando, which you probably should be. So I do not recommend pulling on this. Try to use a Type-0 friend for the bonuses, or pull just a couple of jacks or something like that and trays. But yeah, don't go hard on this banner, guys.